So we talked there about the good person test. And for those people who are familiar with Living Waters' ministry, it's about taking people through the law of God, correct? The 10 Commandments, and analysing themselves or comparing their moral standing against God's law. Now, okay, let's look at this from a different perspective that some people will have. If the Jewish people couldn't keep God's law, and trying to attain righteousness by using the law in a sense is legalism, then what right as a Christian do you have to use the law of God? Now, can you kind of clarify that in regards to how you use it in evangelism as opposed to how the Jewish people would have used it?
That's a good question. Why have the law even that people can't even keep? What's the purpose, right? I mean, first of all, when a Christian talks about the law, we're especially talking about God's moral law, right? The 10 Commandments. There are 613 commandments. I'm sure you know that, Paul, in the Old Testament, given to Moses. That includes the ceremonial and judicial criminal laws. We're talking about God's standard of goodness here. The 10 Commandments are a reflection of his holy character. God can't change that, right? That's consistent, that's permanent. So the moral law is the standard that we are commanded to live by. The law gives us a moral anchor or a moral standard to compare ourselves with. Otherwise, how would we know if we're even living a good moral life or not? Right? Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, so I usually ask people, would you consider yourself to be a good person? As you know, that's what we do. They usually say yes. I then ask them if I can put that to the test, and they usually say yes, happily. But then sometimes I do something that I don't always do. I say, what standard shall we use to see if you are a good person? And of course, at that point, they stump because they can't think of a standard. What standard? And then I remind them that if I said, look, if I'm going to use any old standard here, if you're going to come up with one, then obviously you're going to come up with one that you're going to pass. A criminal cannot come up with a rapist could come up with a standard that they would pass, right? So it won't be a good objective standard. How about we use the 10 Commandments? And usually they say yes. They're usually happy with that. I've never had somebody come up with a standard, which obviously they couldn't.
No.
So God gave us the law to give us a standard to work from. So Paul says in Romans, I would not have known sin except through the law. For what? For I would not have known the covetousness unless the law said you shall not covet, right? So Paul is laying it out. He's saying, I wouldn't know these things. So Paul is saying, that's how I really know what is right and wrong. I know this from God's commandments. But then Paul says that the law exists so that I also know how bad sin is, right? In Romans 7, same chapter, it still says, so that sin through the commandment might become exceedingly sinful. So Paul is saying, this is how I know how heinous my crime is against the holy God, because the law tells me. So what's the ultimate purpose of the law? Well, the Bible tells us that it says, therefore the law was our tutor to bring us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. And some translations say it's our schoolmaster, and some of them say guardian. So once we realize the seriousness of our crime against God by comparing us to this law that we cannot keep, because and God is not going to change that because it's a reflection of his character, it's supposed to make us want to run to Jesus so that we have a savior. So the law doesn't justify us. It does leave us guilty. It doesn't save us. It shows us that we're in trouble and we need a savior. So that will be the kind of the way we would use the law. So the law is not justifying anybody. It's just kind of leaving everybody guilty. You know, you come across the law, you're done. You're done.
So you're saved by faith alone, but the law gets you to that place where you realize you need a savior, and then you trust in the savior and are saved. Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Ephesians chapter 2 verses 8 and 9. Absolutely. It's by grace through faith. Absolutely.